Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this Signicat webinar. Passwords and replacing them in particular is becoming one of the biggest topics of the year, even with major IT analyst firms such as Gartner. So by popular demand, we're now offering this webinar, a crash course to everything passwords. After this webinar, you will have developed an understanding of the history of passwords, and the risks with passwords, and what you can do to replace them. Our speaker today, my colleague John Erik Setsos, is Signicat's top digital identity expert and a much loved public speaker. John Erik, the stage is all yours.
All right, thank you for the introduction and welcome to the webinar, everybody. It's exciting to be here and talk about passwordless. This is something that's becoming more and more relevant, I think, to look at how we identify ourselves. So I started out, I asked, in general, just random people, what are their first thoughts around passwords? What do you think of? And I guess we have a lot of the same feelings, right? Oh, no, not yet another password, and, uppercase and lowercase, and how do I remember all these, and which one should I use and everything. And these were some of the answers I received on that. I mean, they're annoying. We have to use special characters. They're hard to remember. I don't remember them. Oh, not again, etc. I mean, we don't really enjoy seeing this. And I think in the newspaper yesterday, actually in the regional newspaper, one of, or I would say the most famous Norwegian violinist was interviewed. And he said, I get a nervous breakdown whenever somebody mentions the word password. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. We're not really fond of them. We use them a lot, but we would rather be without them. So let's look at some passwords. I mean, the computer password is 60 years. It started back in 1961 at MIT, where they needed some way to have different files from different people, right? And then putting a password, seems like a straightforward solution. So you had some sort of user ID, and then you had a password. So you could see your files and somebody else could see their files. So this was, we think of the start. But the concept of a password, some secret you need to know to get access to something, which is a password, is really, goes back a long time. And this, at least I found, one of the oldest versions of passwords that we know of is the Rosetta Stone. Meaning there is some encryption involved here. You need a password. We call it often an encryption key, but I mean, in this context, it's the same thing. It's some secret you need to know to get access to something. So it goes back a long time. Of course, we all remember Alibaba. He was going to open the secret cave. And again, he needed a password. And you hear what I'm saying? A password, a word to pass. Which was it? What it was? Passwords were also used a lot, or they were also called watchwords, to pass a physical gate, right? So it was used to distinguish friend and foe. So, if you knew the password, well, you were allowed to pass the gate. This was used typically by the military a lot, and especially during the war, you would make sure you wouldn't get foreign soldiers, which meant a lot of countries had their special rules, used words that were really hard to pronounce for foreigners. For example, in the Netherlands, you would use the word Scheveningen. And of course, by my pronunciation, I would be dead already, right? Because I can't pronounce it in the way the Dutch should, which was a clever way to make it more complex. You could call this complex password rules in a way. And I don't know if anybody's played Larry, good old Larry Laffer from 1987. And again, he needs the password to get through that door. And to refresh your memory, the password is Ken sent me. And You find it by walking into the bathroom and reading on the wall several times. Again, it's something you need to know to pass something. Passwords have also become, I found these two articles, I didn't find any new ones, but lawyers urge people to leave their password in their social media passwords in their wills. It's a challenge when you're passing away that you don't leave your passwords. And at this point, passwords mean something else. It's not a general known word to get access to something. It's something that identifies yourself. So suddenly we are at the point where password is used for identification, authentication. So somewhere along the line here, passwords changed from being something to give you access to a door, to a file or something, to something to prove I am who I say I am. And that's very different. I mean, it's very different from saying, okay, you know, okay, you want to get access to my files, here's my password, so you can look at them, to you want to impersonate me. If I give you my password to my EID, that means you can impersonate me. And that asks the question, do people understand authentication? I found this one interesting. Some years back, somebody called into their bank, so phone banking, right? And they were just going to pay a bill. And the person was very frustrated why they had to do all this proof to prove who they were, because they were not going to steal anybody's money. I was going to transfer money out of my account. So you're missing that sort of authentication concept. Well, they don't know who you are. You need to prove it somehow. And again, typically on a phone, you would use a password. Another interesting one, this was actually Apple support. My wife called them. She had some problems with some shared data where we have, sharing some stuff. And she was literally asked by Apple support, can't you log into your husband's account? Meaning she would know my credentials. And no, I don't know my wife's credentials and vice versa. And I don't think that's normal. People share them. And that's one of the problems with passwords. People share them. So question is, do people really understand the passwords? Understand the concept that the password is no longer getting access to something. Password is proving who you are. And people forget them. I mean, we're told to use different passwords everywhere, which of course is one of the golden rules. That means, people can't remember all these passwords. We have hundreds of accounts. People write them down, and they also use the same password, which means they're more vulnerable to attacks. They share them, typically, with their close relatives, and they use common passwords. And all these are challenges for passwords. And I also ask myself, how much responsibility can we put on people? Can we require them to follow all these rules? To use unique password, don't write them down, don't share them with anybody, etc. So we are putting a lot of responsibility on people. And as said, a lot of people don't really have a good understanding of the concept that the password is proving who I am, not giving somebody access. If you look at the service provider side, I mean, for the service provider, it's a security risk. Because if you're a service provider, you have an identity store. You obviously have some customer data that you need to store. But this has become more and more liability, especially with GDPR, where you can get really high fines for if the information is compromised. So if your security is not good enough and it's hacked, well, you would be liable for this. And I mean, security, you may be liable, and also support requests. I mean, one of the most used functions for support was password reset. Of course, now we have these password reset procedures. And then you can say, well, how secure is that? one way that used to be very popular, I don't see it that often anymore, is asking, you enter, your first pet and your high school teacher and, questions like that, supposedly you only know. So the password reset is based on the concept that you're the only one that know this information. And, that's in general a bad idea, because fraudsters, they will get access to this information and probably know it better than you. Or it's, just sending it back to your email address. So if your email has been compromised, well, then people can get access to all these sites. And these are security risks. And again, depending on what kind of information you have about people, well, you really need to consider, is this secure enough? And already back in 1973, 12 years after the birth, the password was close to being a teenager. It was stated, well, password will usually keep out the casual intruder. But if you're determined, nah, not so. I mean, most people would choose passwords that relate somehow to their, dog or soccer team or whatever. So doing some social engineering, you will be able to get the passwords. So in theory, password is known as shared secret. It's something that's shared between me and the service provider. But because I share them, or a lot of people share them, people reuse them. Service providers are hacked. Well, they are shared, but not very secret anymore. They're shared too much. And of course, that's also a challenge. If you're reusing the password, somebody's hacked, well, they will be able to use that same password in other sites as well. So we have all these challenges, right? So why do you still use passwords? Why are they still around? Bill Gates predicted the death of the password back in 2004. He said they will go the way of the dodo. They're still around. If you Google password is dead today, you get about 3 million hits. So there's a lot of talk around this. One of the articles that caught my attention when looking at the password was a study of humans. And, many times I see, been working in this industry for many years, I see we forget the people. And this was a psychology study looking at what's people's perception of the password. And for people, I mean, this is very understandable in a way. I mean, the password and fingerprint were, the ones that scored highest in, usability, intention to use, etc. It's very understandable for users. Comparing to some of the other mechanisms that I will talk about, that, are more difficult to understand what's happening, and therefore they resist these more. So don't forget the human factor in this. People are used to passwords. We are, we hate them, but then again, we are comfortable with them still, even though we hate them. So we have like a love-hate relationship. Okay, so we have established, passwords have all these challenges. So what do we do? Well, one of the first things that came out were complex password rules. Add the uppercase letter and a number and the special characters and all this. If you haven't seen this stand-up by Michael McIntyre, please do, because he's so spot on why this does not work. I mean, it's a funny stand-up act. It's laughable, but then afterwards you think, yeah, he was talking about me, right? And people are so predictable. And since we are predictable, the rules doesn't fool the hackers, because the hackers know that we are predictable. If I'm told to use an uppercase letter, of course I use the first letter, right? Add the number. I have the number at the end and the special character as well. So in that sense, the complex password rule has made it more complex for me, and the hackers are not fooled. They are not really more secure. Same thing with placing, the letter A with an @ sign, or the letter O with a 0. It's not fooling anybody. And they actually apologized for wasting the time. I mean, they had two advices, make the passwords complex and change them often. And now the NIST guidelines which have been updated since, but still you see all these sites requiring all these crazy password rules. Two things that are important. One, the length of the password. Don't worry about complexity. Make it long. Make it a sentence. Include spaces. And if you do have, a solution that use password, make sure don't have an upper limit on number of characters. Allow spaces. People want to write a sentence. So much easier to understand that, a crappy password with special characters. And don't change them frequently. If you use different passwords on different sites, no need to change them often. And again, change doesn't solve anything because, again, people are predictable. If I'm going to change my password and there's a number in it, what do? I change the number. So I will know, if it's not if the first one doesn't work, oh, okay, no, I changed it. So it's a number 2 instead. People are so predictable. Even a story around this, not even on the predictable side, but this was at an organization where, they had the complex password rules, and the head of security told the employees, well, to make this simpler for you, you make a base password and you add a number, for example, the month. And so he actually invented the system for the employees. So everybody then had their core password, which was the same. And every time they changed it, they changed the last 2 digits to the number of the month. Have we increased security? Of course not. And also, interestingly enough, if you look at the Enigma decryption of that was based on repetitive patterns. The Germans were very organized. They demanded, repetition to avoid mistakes. I mean, this was radio, so you could have some bad transmissions. So you had these repetition patterns, and that was actually core of being able to break the Enigma encryption. So the Nazi messages could be decrypted, and they knew what would happen. And then we said, well, password managers. Yeah, password managers are great. I use one myself, which means I have long passwords. I don't even know my passwords. I have different passwords. I get breach notification. I get notification if I reuse the password. And in most cases, they can fill forms. So using one is great, but they don't address the core problem. We're still sort of just trying to patch onto the password problem. And how simple are they really to use? I mean, I've been working with computer all my life, and still I have issues with this is not that simple. And then you have all the different password policies on different sites. Again, the complex password rules that we really hate, where you say, well, you have to have a special characters, and then you add a hyphen. No, you can't use that special character. And, a lot of problems like that. So we're not addressing the core of the problem with this. And also, passwords alone are not enough. So then we do some more mitigation. Well, we realize, well, we have passwords. We try to add these password rules and so on. But we say, okay, not enough by itself. So we need to add something. So then we start adding multi-factor authentication, which is based on something you know or and have. And in most cases, this is a text message. So I enter my username and my password, and then I get a text message to validate. Text messages are broken. There is quite easy to set up a way to catch text message coming back. So there's a flaw in sort of the basic protocol, which is quite a few years old. And this has been used. It's been proven. This was, 3 years back? That, yeah, if I want to do a targeted attack, no problem, I can catch your passwords. Also known that PSD2 uses a more fancy word. They call it CA, Strong Customer Authentication. It's the same thing, right? You need to have some additional factor. And of course, there are different factors. We are doing this already. I mean, we have the card and PIN. We've been doing that for a long time, and which is actually passwordless, right? Is PIN passwordless? Well, we'll get back to it. Time-based OTPs is a lot better than the SMS, because there's no transmission, nothing that can be captured on the way. Some people use hardware tokens, and again, in general, people don't want and yet another thing to carry with them, then you're in a different location and you don't have that available. And also the cost of maintaining this. So basically, you want to have this as an app as well. But again, as said by Tricia Williams from Gartner, this is sort of outdated. We really need to take a step back and look at, how do you authenticate? How do you prove who you are? Because that's the core of the problem. I need to prove who I am. And currently we're doing this mechanism. I'm using a password because we're thinking, well, if I know this, I must be who I say I am, which is not true. And if I know this text message that came back, well, I must be who I say I am. No, it only means I have access to that device. I mean, most of us have text messages set up, so they pop up even though the phone is locked. So back to the core of the problem, and if you've seen me before, you say I love this one, which is more than 25 years old. I mean, nobody knows your dog. You need to know who you are. And also when going through this, I realized the beauty of what we're doing, seen from the user point of view and seen from the setup. I mean, the simplistic beauty of the password and a one-time code as a text message. There's no prerequisites. Well, I need to have a phone, but I mean, everybody has a phone, even a good old stupid phone. There are no preparations. I don't need to prepare or download or install or do some initial setup. This works on any kind of good old stupid phone as well, the text message. And this is really hard to compete with, right? Something that sort of just works out of the box compared to something, well, no, you need to install this and you need to have, iPhone or Android that's newer than so and so version, and you need to install and set up and all that. It makes things a lot more complex, obviously. But still, we need to fight that. We need to make that simpler. And in use, it's a lot simpler in a lot of cases, the passwordless, but we need to do these preparations and setup, and we don't like to do that. So passwordless. Well, passwordless only says what it does not do. So what is passwordless? Well, we want to get rid of the password. For my daily life, this is one of the best examples. I'm using my Apple Watch to pay. And this is definitely passwordless because I only blip my watch. There's no need for a PIN code. Well, I do the PIN code once when I take on my watch, and then I can use it many times. And even though PSD2 says, well, you need to, there's some cap on the amount and the accumulated amount. This one is verified by the device, which is different. Like if somebody takes my credit card, well, they can still use it if they run away with it. So there needs to be a limit. My watch, as soon as you take it off my wrist, it's going to again require the PIN code, so it's useless for payment. So this is actually a very good solution for a passwordless and pinless. Makes it really convenient, easy to pay and to confirm the transaction. Again, I borrowed this from Gartner, and there are a lot of methods for authentication. Some are based on knowledge. We talked about passwords, but there's also patterns, pictures, and PIN codes. And I'll explain in a while why PIN code is not the same as a password. You could have a token, like a one-time password sent somewhere. You can do out of bands, different ways. We're looking more and more on biometrics, both static but also behavioral. And I think that's the way we are going with this. So there are different ways, and I'll touch on some of these. But before I go that road, I think everybody who is recognizing users need to ask themselves, do you have to be an identity provider? Do you need to be responsible for this yourself? Or can you use an EID, for example? EIDs are expert companies providing proof of identity. So if you're using, for example, a bank ID or a MIT ID or IDIN or whatever different EIDs, you don't really need to worry about the authentication part because somebody else is doing that. You don't need to worry about password resets. You don't have that responsibility. Even though you're hacked, well, they won't get any passwords or that sort of credential information. Of course, you will still release potentially sensitive information. But if you protect, protect your security and then use this, you will have much stronger protection than if using just a user name, password, and a text message. So really something to consider. Can you use an EID? And yes, you can use this even though you're not regulated, a bank or insurance or whatever. You can still use the bank IDs. Of course, there are some identity schemes that are global. You have the social media providers. The difference between them and the bank IDs is that the identity is not validated. I can create a Facebook account. There's no validation of my identity. If I create a bank ID, well, I'm validated to prove I'm really John Erik. So, but something to consider. I would stay away from the social media because they don't really prove who you are. Okay, and then I mentioned several times PIN. Is a PIN passwordless? Let's look how they're different. Well, a password must be longer, of course, and it's stored and managed by the service provider, and as such, it's vulnerable to attacks. A PIN code is typically short, numeric, 4, 6, 8 digits, so it's more convenient to enter, and it's tied to physical device. Excuse me. So there's no central storage of PIN codes. The PIN code is used to unlock your phone, your SIM card, your credit card for payment, even Windows logins now, you can use PIN code. So this is a local storage. So it's only used locally. And it was default to a password or something more complex if you, for some reason, cannot get access. So PIN code is better than a password because you are not vulnerable to attacks in the same way. One interesting one that I can see is gaining some interest is the expanded password system. So instead of having to memorize a password, and we are not really good at remembering text. Our brains were never invented to use text. We have a visual memory, which is very good. So the idea behind this is that, I upload a number of photos that are mine, that I know I recognize as those. And then when you need to authenticate, well, it shows a number of photos. In this example, it's 6x6, 36 photos. 5 or 6 of them are yours. And you only need to click on your photos. And that will be very simple for you. It will be hard to forget. Somebody said this is, the password is hard to remember. Pictures are hard to forget. You will know which photos are yours and which are not. And you will select only the ones that are your own, and that will be very simple to do. So this is an interesting thing. Biometrics, of course, yeah, we're looking more and more at biometrics. Typically, many of us use it now for our mobile device, and it's backed up by the PIN, and it unlocks the secure mobile storage. So it's a good way when you have a good passwordless solution installed. It will use the secure storage on a mobile phone. So it will be very difficult for somebody to hack it in and get access to that secure storage. So as such, it can be made very secure, and it's easy, nothing to remember. It's also possible to set up biometrics only with no PIN backup if something fails, which is challenging if for some reason the biometrics doesn't work, because then you need to go all the way back and reprove who you are by whatever mechanism you did. That would, include scanning your identity paper and go through that whole process. So typically you would have a PIN, but that depends on the security. It does require a trusted environment. You need to get fresh measurements. You need to know that this is a trusted sensor. Never assume the biometrics to be secret, because it's not. It's really easy to pick up somebody's biometrics, from glassware, or even somebody managed to pick up somebody's fingerprint from a photo. And of course, it's important to protect this against attacks. Some challenges with biometrics is bias and also inclusion. Not everybody's fingerprint can be read. We've seen some examples where the biometrics are biased on skin color. And with people with darker skin, it's so much harder to have that recognition process, etc. So we still have a ways to go with this. And also looking at this, I found this really amusing tweet. Which pretty much proves, even though your fingerprint was used, it doesn't mean that you used it and you were present. So something to take into the consideration. So looking at ways we want to go. I mean, our mobile device is great. It's a very good processes. It can do crypto, so it has the ability to crunch the numbers and so on. We talked about SMS and OTP, which can be sent to it and it's in your possession, but is it broken? Does it show up if your device is not locked? And the UX, again, I need to read off the mobile phone and type in somewhere else. You can have some TOTP, or you have that equivalent of a physical token implemented in software on the device. How do you ensure it's not duplicated? And again, the UX, you need to type in whatever code you get from that app into your login process. So really what you want is what we call out-of-bands mechanism, where you have something installed which communicates using a secure back channel and has a really good user experience. And some of you may have tried this, for example, with Google. This is just one example, but in many places it's being used now, where you say, okay, the second factor, you log in, again, you still have your basic username and password, so we haven't gotten rid of all of that in this context. It uses then a secure back channel. Then on the device, you just need to confirm, yeah, this was me, and I'm good. And it's important for these apps to have what we call jailbreak and debug detection. So it's not possible to run them in debug mode. It's not possible to run them if you have a jailbreak phone, which also could be vulnerable to picking up the information. And they would typically use the local biometrics or PIN on the phone for validation. So if you look at a mobile ID solution, it's linked to the user. And that's the biggest challenge with this, is the link, because you need to establish that link. It doesn't work out of the box like the basic username and password and SMS OTP. So you need to go through that process. But a good mobile ID solution, this is actually very simple. You get up a QR code on the screen, you scan the QR code, and then you have linked the device. And the device is fingerprint. So not the fingerprint, but the device itself is fingerprinted. So it belongs to this specific device, so it can't be transferred to another environment. The back channel is secure, so it's extremely difficult to interrupt the back channel from the app and the device. And this is really a way you would want to go, and this is what the Signicat mobile ID solution is doing, making it very simple. So in this case, it would be login, username, password, and then you authenticate on the device. Or even forget the password. Username, get a pop-up on the device, fingerprint, and you're in. And now we're passwordless. In addition, adding contextual information is good. You will then collect all the browser information. If you're curious about how much information the service provider can get about you, try this My Browser Info. And you will see there's a lot of information about, of course, the time, the IP address, location, etc., but also the operating system, the browser type, the language, the size of the browser, etc. A lot of information. This will typically be used to detect abnormalities. So if I suddenly logged in from a Safari browser, I'm on Windows, if I suddenly used Safari or logged in from a Mac, that would be a signal, hey, this is probably not John Erik. Things like that. But again, it's being met with a lot of reluctance. What about legacy applications? How do you authenticate towards them that were built many years ago and depend on passwords? What about the user experience? Well, I've shown the user experience can be really good. You enter username, you verify on the device, and you're done. There is, of course, some cost overhead. There is always this security. What's the security reluctance on this? I mean, is it secure enough? Regulations may not be clear on, what is good enough. We are so used to passwords; it's so embedded in everything. And what about the privacy around this? So, some interesting concerns around the passwords. And also, I just want to say something about the authentication. Can it be too smooth? We're all looking about, friction. It should be so easy and so on. And yes, for authentication, we typically want that. The question is, if I transfer a large amount of money to somebody I haven't paid to before, am I okay with only fingerprint? And whoop, there it's gone. Wouldn't I then want to be assured that, hey, are you really sure about this? Please enter your PIN code as well, or, add some more. I would think that for most people, if the transaction value is considered high, you will expect more friction in the process. And again, people asked about the security, and they like to see the security. That gives them confidence to see the security processes in place. And an example, I'm trying out a new bank now, internet bank. The old one, if I transfer more than a certain amount to account I haven't sent money to before, it prompts me using my bank ID to sign the transaction. So I get, a signature request on my mobile saying, confirm transferring, this amount to this account number, and I use my my mobile device to sign that transaction. Well, this new one, it was just, okay, now it's gone. And it was a large amount of money, and I was sort of expecting to have that additional step with the friction in it. And also electronic signatures. Important part of signatures is it's some intent. I have a reason to sign, right? I'm committing to something, so I need to indicate approval. It needs to be reliable and identify. Of course, that's important. But looking just at the intent, if I only look at my phone and that signs something, will that be good enough? Will then somebody be able to claim that, well, I had the intent to sign this? And now even I was thinking now using the when we're using mask during COVID, now I've connected my Apple Watch. So even with a mask, my phone will unlock. My Apple Watch says, okay, we've unlocked this setting now, even with the mask on. So I can now, if this was the only thing that was done for signature, I think this would probably not be enough to prove intent from the signer's side. So we need something else. And I often claim that for electronic signatures, although it doesn't add anything to security, having this scribble where you trace your finger on the screen to scribble something is a really good part of the ceremony. It really gives the users a good understanding. Okay, now I'm committing to something, because signature in people's head, that's doing this scribble. Okay, something on the future. So I really want to have a device that knows it's in my possession, similar to what I'm started to use with my Apple Watch. But if somebody takes my phone, they will know it doesn't belong to me anymore, or it's not in my possession anymore. Somebody is running away with it. Well, John never runs, so that can't be him, etc. And it will disconnect, etc. And because we are creatures of habit, this is typically my travel route from home to work in the good old days before Corona, when I actually went to work. Now it would be just a red dot on the right there. But we pretty much follow the same patterns, and what I mentioned, we can use this. I mentioned we can collect all the browser info. We can collect a lot of sensors on my devices to determine, is it in my possession? What Wi-Fi network? What's my location? Is it still connected to my Apple Watch, or did it disconnect, etc.? All these parameters, and build a trust score based on that. And that would simplify a lot. Well, the device is my possession. No need to bother me anymore for login, because it's proven I'm holding it, not somebody else. I saw an interesting talk, and this has been around for some time as well, about Heart ID. The mobile devices are becoming really good now at measuring a lot of things, including your heartbeat. And this would be pretty hard to fake, right? Because it doesn't measure your pulse, but it measures these ECG patterns, which are unique to everybody. That's an interesting way to go. And also, I think the way going forward, where we are so obsessed, I would say, with knowing who people are, right? But in most cases, we only need to know certain aspects about them. We don't really need to know their true identity. For example, I want to prove I'm over 18. Why do I need to show my ID with everything? I'm allowed to drive a car, or I do work for Signicat, or I'm a Norwegian citizen. We want to limit that. That's the way going forward. We're still going to need this authentication, and I still really would like this in my possession app for authenticating. And then I could go to the government, get a claim. I only want a claim proving I'm over 18. That's the only piece of information. I put that in a wallet, and then I can share that multiple times. And on the service provider side, well, you will get a claim that this user, you won't know their identity, but you will know that this user is over 18. You know this is a real user. You know it's a correct person. You can't borrow this from others because of the security mechanisms. You know it's true if you trust the register where it's come from. And the issuer doesn't know where I use it, which is also an important parameter. So I think this is something to keep eyes open for. Going away from this concept, I always need to know so much about you, to, well, I only need to validate this and this information. Okay, so let's try to summarize. I've talked a lot about this now. Passwords. And this is general advice. I'm sure everybody's heard them before. Don't reuse them. A long password is much better than a complex password. Make it a sentence. Changing passwords, no reason to do that unless they've been compromised and you're using the same passwords in several places. So don't force your users to change the password, because it's not increasing security, because people are predictable. And to people who use a password manager, this of course cannot be enforced by the service provider, right? You cannot tell people how to manage their passwords. You just, in a way, trusting them to do it in a safe way, and most people don't. But I advise use a password manager. There are a lot of options out there. Don't save the password in the browser. It's not a secure storage. Use a professional company on that. Gartner prediction, saying by 2022, this came out 2 years ago, that a lot of enterprises will have passwordless solutions in place. And we do have customers using this already, our mobile ID solution. A lot of customers are using the eIDs. So this would be advice to service providers. I mean, do you have to be an identity provider? Do you really need to do this yourself? If not, look at the eIDs. Easy to implement. We provide one access to all these eIDs you see here. So you can have one API and you can reach all the different eIDs. Consumers want them. We asked some consumer research, and they like using the eID because they're familiar. And especially in the Nordics, where coverage is 90%, we use them 5 to 10 times per week. We're so familiar with the eID. It's, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'm going to use it again. No worries about that. While all this, login and password is going to be different. So it gives some confidence. It gives some increased security. And also for the service provider, you're getting a validated identity, which is important. Okay, if you cannot or don't want to go down that road, a mobile ID solution is good. It's either an app you install or you embed code into your mobile application for doing this. This is secure back channel, a lot of security. If you want more on the Signicat mobile ID, we have some webinars that go into details on that. At least if you're only using passwords today, at least add some multi-factor authentication. Even SMS OTP, which I've said several times is broken, is better than not having anything. So that's important. And also consider different journeys based on the risk and the user experience. As again, if you're doing a signature, if the value is high, well, consider doing something more. Consider authorization models. A lot of this sharing of passwords is because lack of authorization models. Okay, I'm going to help my wife with my taxes. Do I have to log into her with her account? No, because the Norwegian tax authority provides an authorization model. So I can log in with my user and do her taxes. So all traces, all the logs will show I was doing it and not her. If I had borrowed her EID, well, I would be her when I was doing that online, and all the traces would show. And that's some of the fraud we see where people are taking consumer finance loans in their spouse's name. So consider authorization models. Prepare for the passwordless. We are going in that direction. Make it simple for the user, make a simple login mechanism, and watch out for verifiable claims, mechanisms where, well, you're not getting all this information for users. You're getting some validated facts. This is still some years out, but it's coming, and it's something really to watch out for. That concludes my intense presentation on passwords and passwordless and different ways. And yeah, Johanna, have you gotten any questions from the audience on this?
Yes, we have a couple of questions. So thank you, John Eric. I think you just managed to deliver the most entertaining crash course on which might not seem like the most fun topic.
Well, it's really exciting. I mean, I love this stuff, and doing the research on the passwords. I mean, I found a lot of interesting things I couldn't even put in here. So yeah.
I have received a couple of questions. So one of them is related to why passwordless is becoming an issue now. Does it have to do something with companies moving more and more into self-service for their customers? So what do you see are the reasons behind this this trend that more and more organizations are looking to provide a secure login to their service channels?
Well, I mean, it's have become more and more a buzzword the last couple of years. But as I showed in the presentation, even in 1973, it was said, passwords will only protect you from the honest users, right? If you want to get in, you can do that. And Bill Gates killed the password back in 2004, and it's still around. So we've been trying to get rid of the passwords for a long time. But I think now one of the catalysts what's going on right now is, of course, COVID, with all the restrictions. So much have to be done remotely, both for consumers but also employees, right? We don't have that. I mean, we used to say, well, you just come into the branch and sign the document, or you show up physically and register and so on. We're not there anymore. We are moving the sort of security parameters. So people are working from home. People are doing all their business from home. So there's been so much more focus on that. We're getting so much more inexperienced users online, because everybody have to go online. And the inexperienced users that are not used to working this way, that doesn't have that conscious relationship with password, they pose a security risk, and not only for themselves, but in a business scenario for the whole organization, right? If somebody then can impersonate me going into my organization, well, that's a big problem as well. So I think COVID-19 has been or is a catalyst, and we see that from a number of requests from organizations that you want to do electronic signatures and want to improve on this. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's become so much more hot topic now.
Yeah. Okay. Another question, and this I can actually give some background to this. So we have a customer, Fortum. They are in the utilities, in the energy services, and they are using Signicat's authentication. So Signicat delivers them authentication, secure login as a service to all the Nordic countries. In what situations do you think an organization should consider moving away from user-generated passwords to using an EID, which, for example, Bank ID consumers use already for login in different services?
So you are sort of a service provider. You're a guardian of some user information, right? You're holding some information on behalf of the user. And in some cases, this may be sensitive information. I mean, medical, obviously, I mean, there's if you are afraid that some information you're going to expose some information because somebody got the password and was able to log in as another user and get their information. So you don't really have to be regulated and having the strong AML requirements. You need to know who really this person is and so on. But still, you want to protect people. You want to show them that your information is safe with me. You can safely store. I mean, let's say you're running a psychologist practice, with many people and so on, have a lot of customers, and even that has gone online right now. This is sensitive information. You want to really make sure that somebody else doesn't come in and get access to that information. You want to protect it in a good way, and you want to give your customers the confidence that you're protecting in a good way. And I think using the EIDs gives that confidence.
How about logging into mobile apps? One thing I've noticed is that during the last couple of years, so more and more mobile apps have a possibility to purchase things. For example, a gas station loyalty card app. They offer the possibility to save my credit card details there. So what are your thoughts on securing mobile apps as there's more and more private information, even our payment details saved in those apps?
Yeah, okay. So a lot of questions on that. I mean, and first and foremost, you say a lot is happening on the mobile. I mean, at my age, I think this puny little screen here is too small to do real stuff. I want to have the big computer to do my real stuff. But I realize for a lot of people, this is the interface to the world. That's what they're doing, and this is also again why organizations have a mobile first strategy. You want to be there. And the new bank I'm trying out, well, they're only on mobile. They don't have a web application at all. And then, interesting, well, storing credit card information. And I think that's also something that's should be in the past. But everybody's doing it. I mean, it's a nightmare right now because I had my credit card expired on date and I got a new one. And all these sites are hammering me, oh, you need to update your credit card details in all these sites, which shouldn't be necessary. Like I should have a payment method where I authenticate directly and then the payment is made without them having to store that. Okay, that said, I mean, they're storing information, and of course it has to be stored in a safe way, and they need to give me confidence that it's stored in a safe way. And of course, the secure environment on the phone is doing that. That's where you store your private keys and security information to protect it. And that's also what we're using our mobile ID solution to make sure it's really, really hard for somebody to be able to access that information and also copy it and duplicate my device. So with modern devices, the security on the device is pretty good, assuming, of course, that people actually have the lock and the PIN code. I mean, I came over a relative that had their phone lying open, no PIN code. Now that was just a hassle, to do that. And then I picked up the phone, and then one of the notes, actually the top note, that was all the passwords in clear text. And again, yes, we are putting some responsibility on people, and which shouldn't be necessary, right? We cannot depend, because people will always take the road of least resistance. They will assume that things are secure, that's the service provider's responsibility.
Yeah. Attendees can still ask questions. You can use the panel in Zoom. I have one more question to Jon Erik, a more personal one. If you had a choice that you would use one login method for every service that you log in, what would that be?
Bank ID.
Why would that be?
No, I said initial bank ID because I'm using it a lot already. But now, really, I think even bank ID is too much friction. It provides high security, the trust in that. So if I could have, my dream is that my mobile device would know that is in my possession. And I go to a site and the site verifies, is the mobile in Jon Erik's possession? Yes, it is. Don't bother him anymore. We know that's true. And if in any doubt, pop up a message saying, hey, Jon Erik, are you there? Prove, I do Face ID, and that's it. I mean, that would be the really good passwordless experience for me. And you know what, we can provide that, right, Johanna?
Yes. So biometrics is definitely gaining more popularity because consumers are used to using them, and it's possible to provide the same seamless biometric login experience in a safer way.
Right. And just to comment, I mean, I said initially bank ID, but you know, bank ID would be a good way to onboard. So when the site wants to know who am I really, you know, that would typically be bank ID. And then as part of the onboarding process, I would do the setup of my mobile ID. I would scan the QR code, and that would be it. I would do that once when creating the account, and then it would be really easy. Every time I log in, I would just, you know, Face ID on my device, or in the future, don't even do that because, you know, my phone is here and the phone knows it's here.
Yeah, good. I think that is all the questions that we had today. So thank you everybody for joining. I hope you found the crash course useful, and as always, John Eric is able to present things in a captivating way. So thank you, and we will follow up by sharing a recording with you after the webinar.
Yes, thanks everybody.